Hey, this is the World Advice Channel 2. What I want to talk about today is the topic of, are we living in the best type of civilization? So for this video, I'm going to explain in a simple and straightforward way when it comes to the numerous types of civilizations that have existed throughout human history, if we are living in the best type of one in a simple and straightforward way, so anyone can understand it. So if you're interested in finding out if we're living in the best type of civilization in existence, then watch this video in order to find out. So now that I mentioned that, let's get started. So when it comes to answering that question straight up, yes, I do believe we are living in the best type of civilization that has ever existed. Okay? To be quite blunt and honest with you, okay? Because when it comes to societies and the different types of societies that have existed throughout human history, okay, which you could say are civilizations, whatever, you get the point. Like ways people live, a group of people live, throughout human history, whether it could be self-sufficiency, like Native Americans and people, in other parts of the world, like, Europe at one point, and of course Africa and Asia and a lot of different places in the world, subsistence types of civilizations, or it could be maybe a feudalist civilization where you grow your own food and stuff, but aside from growing your own food, you have to rely on the government for protection and doing all sorts of things for you, and like creating your clothing and all that stuff. Or it could be a warlike civilization, like the Spartans and all that type of stuff. I definitely have to say that we are living in the best type, okay, of civilization that has ever existed, and definitely better than communism, okay? Because the reason why I say that, even though I know everyone's gonna say, especially intellectuals, which I would assume the majority of my audience are intellectuals, who say the world's falling apart. But the reason why the world's falling apart is not because of our capitalist society. It's falling apart because of stupid technicalities. Capitalism is just a fundamental system that is obsessed with growth, okay? You produce this amount of money and this and that, you'll have this and you'll have that, okay? It's extremely overhated, okay? It's just technicalities that come in the way, like the fact that, a lot of conservatives have removed, rules that like protected things like corruption happening in the economic system. Conservatives, more like Republicans for that matter, like they like Ronald Reagan saying we need a free market, which is literally just paved the way for the financial 2008 crash, which we still haven't fully recovered from, to a lot of things Republicans did that just literally screwed up everything and just helped encourage chaos and division of the population. Their party sucks, and I've made that clear numerous times, and I'm not going to hide it. Okay, they really do suck. The Conservative Party sucks a dick, and I'm not changing my opinion for it. So, the truth of the matter is, aside from these point technicalities, fundamentally the capitalist system we live in today, the society we live in today, the civilization, whatever you want to say, let's just say society to make things simple, is really the best one ever, because not only does it help encourage economic growth, because people have certain specialties. Some people specialize in creating clothing, some people specialize in creating accessories like combs and stuff to keep lice out of people's hair. Some people focus on things like soap to make sure that we don't all get sick. Some people obviously food, all that type of stuff, okay? And the numerous other things that make our society, okay? Our society encourages specialization. You might naturally be good at this, so you produce this. Instead of living in a society that, like, for example, is self-sufficient, okay? And not only that, does our capitalist society provide, the idea of people specializing in things, it also, make sure that we obviously also have lives that are actually enjoyable. While other societies in the past, entertainment and stuff like that was considered, decadence and specifically in warlike societies, in our society, things like that actually make life enjoyable and not just enjoyable, but worth actually living instead of living in a boring, mundane life where you just live to live. Like, what the fuck is the point of living if you just live to live and not live to enjoy? That's so dumb, you know? And that's exactly what I'm trying to say here, okay? And that's exactly the point I'm trying to get across, okay? You know, it just generally is. Because all of the other types of civilizations that existed, and communism, oh my god, which I'm going to get to soon, but oh my god, this is the worst. But like I was saying before, you know, all the different types of societies that we've ever had, self-sufficiency type societies, where everyone creates their own stuff, like pretty much like how Native American societies, even to a certain degree early American societies were, when America was still a new country that was less than 100 years old, like the pioneer days and stuff like that. The problem with those type of societies, at first and foremost, it prevents economic growth, you know, because it doesn't encourage people to really sell things, because if you can create your own things, what exactly is the point of like you know, having someone else do it for you, which would make people generate money, okay? Which self-sufficient societies are tend to be very hard to live, and not only that, they prevent growth because everyone creates their own stuff. They don't rely on anyone to do things for them. Secondly, the problem with those types of societies is that they tend to be very boring because people are too busy working instead of actually entertaining themselves, okay? They tend to be very boring. No entertainment, no nothing, no learning about the rest of the world or anything that can actually keep you focused, okay? Those types of societies tend to be extremely boring, and that's a problem with them that obviously can cause chaos in the long run and encourage problems, okay? So the problem with self-sufficient societies is boring. Feudalist societies tend to be flawed because obviously people don't have much power and they have to rely on someone to do things for them. Warlike societies tend to be absolutely one of the worst type of societies, because the problem with war type societies is that war type societies tend to be very boring. Well, not necessarily boring, actually, complete opposite, but they only rely on war. And you can only rely on war for so long if you're not smart enough to adjust, until you're going to obviously have issues, okay, with how much money you're making, because not all the time there's war. And what happens when you have a society that has people obsessed with violence and there's no conflict? It can create chaos, okay? Whether it could be the Spartans, civilizations, the Japanese samurai are another example of that. They literally had a culture of people who sometimes just killed people for the sake of it, just because they thought it was fun, you know? And that's not a good society to live in at all, where people get so bored that they kind of want something to happen. And we can't forget about the Polynesian civilizations that also had a system that was kind of similar, you know? They had a lot of ideas of sometimes war is just killing common people for the sake of it, because they're bored, okay? So warlike societies tend to be tribulate because not only does it not make money, it helps encourage people, if there's no war, to kind of get bored, and it gives people ideas that are not really the greatest, okay? And of course, communism is just stupid. It's just the idea of, the idea that humans are evil, we cannot control ourselves, we need the government to control us, and it's just an economic disaster because it doesn't encourage people to really buy things. It just encourages people to rely on the government to do everything for them, like create things for them in one way or the other, and it doesn't encourage people to actually want to actually do anything, you know, like to live for anything, you know. There's nothing entertaining, there's no entertainment because that's considered decadence, and they just don't have anything. It's just boring, it's redundant, and the only thing that really seems to make it entertaining, you know, is all the chaos and drama that happens in the government, let alone, of course, let's not forget, and most importantly of all, economically, it's a disaster. Every communist society is fallen because people don't really buy things, because there's nothing to our society, as not only does it help encourage economic growth, you know, through people buying things from each other, it also makes life actually enjoyable and interesting in a good way. So we actually are people who have something to live for. Okay, whether it could be things, documentaries about what's going on in the world, sports, that are entertaining and things like that. It makes life actually enjoyable and worth living, let alone a promise of actually having more, like being rich and famous. So it makes life actually interesting, let alone it actually economically makes sense. And that's the truth. So anyway, this is my video. This is all I have to say. And I hope you enjoyed it. And simply put, I'm out. So bye.